So, what's a negative attachment? Well, we are whole. Like, you are whole, I am whole. You are a free spirit. Your soul knows what's up. And when we have trauma or some kind of like thing wasn't met in childhood, we will like forget part of our wholeness. And then that can like bleed through into ways of being that might not be in our highest good. So I think everyone probably has some ways that they don't fully love themselves in this life. We all have ways that we can love ourselves more, that we can improve, that we can just be kinder to our energy. I'm sure you're probably thinking of some ways right now that you could be kinder to yourself. And if we really knew like how good we are inside, there would be no need to disrespect the self. There would be no need to engage in addictions. There would be no need to engage in toxic relationships. There would be no need to scroll on your phone all the time. If you really knew how good you are and how worthy of love you are, you wouldn't do those things that you know are bad for you that you do anyway. But there are parts of us that like don't know that don't know that we are worthy of love, that don't know that we don't have to do that. And maybe these parts of us are not like in our conscious mind. Maybe we think that we're doing a good job and we think that we are worthy of love, but we're still like doing things that are bad for us. And it's because the parts of you that like don't know that you're worthy of love might not be parts of you that you are consciously aware of. They might be parts of you that you have suppressed or avoided or like hid from for a really long time. And so that's where negative attachments come from. They come from parts of us that we have not loved. They really are just parts of us that we have not loved. And so what happens is like if you have a part of you that has not been loved enough, or there's some memory or some version or some piece of your soul or your identity or your energy that is sort of like stuck in maybe a pattern in childhood, or maybe like some inauthentic way of being, like that can sort of, and I know this might not be comfortable to like talk about or think about, but that can actually invite in energies that are not for your highest good. That can invite in energies that like continue to sort of play off of that wound and like take from it, sort of. I think that we have these like thoughts that in things like psychic work and mediumship and contacting spirits, that spirits are like different from people, but they're not. Like any spirit that you contact is just like when you go out in public and you like talk to a stranger, it's like beware of stranger danger. You know, any stranger that feels weird to you in some way probably is, you know, trust your intuition. So it's just like that with people. Like sometimes you'll meet someone and they will just feel like something is like off. They'll feel weird. Or maybe you'll meet someone and they'll feel good to you. And like spirits are people, people are spirits. Like people have spirits attached to them. Spirits have people attached to them. It's really just all about vibes. It's really all about what feels good. It really is all about that, what feels good and what feels bad. So like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say that you have like trauma. around being abandoned. And so like even though you're like 25, there's still like a part of you inside that's like a little child that like wants someone to like promise them that they'll never leave them. And so even though you're like an adult, like when you get yourself into a relationship, you all of a sudden feel this need to like convince your partner to never leave you, or you feel like you're not okay unless you get like all this validation that they'll like never leave you or something. And that isn't really who you are, because you're worthy of love and you're worthy of like commitment. And that's like true, like your true self, your soul, the part of you that is energy that never dies, like that part of you isn't scared of abandonment, because like that part of you is whole. But like in your conscious mind or in your life right now as a human, it's like you still have that fear. And so like that fear like lives inside of you. It's like a little hole in your heart. It's like a little void inside of you. And we attract people, we attract energies, we attract life situations based off of who we resonate at, and like what we feel like, and like what sound our soul is making, and what sound our body is making, and like what energy we're carrying. And so like if you have that abandonment wound in your heart that you haven't looked at, that's like that little hole in your heart, you're gonna like attract life situations on top of life situations, people on top of people who like resonate with that combination of energy that you're putting off, of that wholeness and that void. You're going to attract situations that show that to you, because we attract what we are, as above, so below. So like, that might mean that maybe you'll attract people who are also scared of abandonment, or maybe you'll attract someone who will abandon you, or maybe you'll attract someone who you will abandon, but in some way that vibe and that void and that story will like play out in your life. And like the relationships that you build that are like fundamentally based off of that void of abandonment, those can be called negative attachments. Negative attachments are relationships, are cords. In other words, a relationship can be seen in energy dynamics as like a cord between you and a person, or like you and a situation. Negative attachments are like cords or relationships that are based off of negativity, that are based off of a lack of wholeness. Excuse me, I burped. And when things get kind of complicated is when negative entities attach to negative attachments, which is very common, unfortunately. I'd say a lot of people have some kind of unhealed trauma that there is like a negative vibe attached to that trauma that isn't necessarily them. Now, this can get really, really, really dark to the point where it's like a possession or a semi-possession, or it can just be like relatively innocuous where a person just has like a negative vibe about them. And I want you to know that all negative vibes come from an unhealed wound within both the energetic parasite or the entity and the host, the person. So like, and like I said, it's a spectrum. You know, you can have someone who has like they just have kind of a bad vibe about them, and maybe it's not there all the time, but like it is there sometimes. And then you can also have someone who has developed such a strong relationship with their woundedness that, you know, entities actually kind of come forward and possess them. And this is very, very common in alcoholism and meth addiction, and pretty severe drug addictions are almost always, in my opinion, as a psychic, I do see most severe chemical addictions kind of go hand in hand with forms of possession. So yeah. Now, the entities that possess, that is very, very unique to each situation. The spirit world is definitely not a one size fits all by any means. There are many different spirits that could possess a person. There's many different reasons why. There could be past life reasons, there could be karmic reasons, there could be energetic reasons. It doesn't really matter in this video. I could go into specifics in a different one, but I think for the sake of time and you know, people who are just learning about this, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here. But what I will say is, like, it's important to know what it feels like to be you. It's important to know what it feels like to be happy. It's important to know what your energy feels like. Because if you have a trauma, or if you are sad or scared or afraid, it can get really easy to forget who you are and forget what it feels like to be you. And that's when you can allow or invite other spirits or other energies into your energy and into your body or your sphere or your aura that actually kind of enjoy feeding off of your pain. And this is something that happens all the time. I mean, I like to think about, like, if you listen to like really angry like pop music about like breaking up with someone or the toxicity of that, and maybe you just feel like a little bit more amped up than you did before, and like you know that like that music isn't, it's weird because it's not like bad, like it doesn't feel like it's like bad music, but it doesn't feel like it's really growing your spirit either. It's like sometimes we can get stuck in these like liminal headspaces of like mediocrity, and like we feel comfortable in that, and like we relate to people through that, and we meet people who like perpetuate those like negative assumptions about others. Like that's a form of energetic attachment. Does that make sense? Like if I was like upset about a breakup and I listened to like, I don't know, like Olivia Rodrigo sing about how horrible men are or something. Like, yeah, men suck, but that's also like just one layer of perception. And if I like stay in that like fuck men era of myself, that's going to like feed into the void in me that is like hurt. And that doesn't actually like help anything. That kind of just perpetuates a negative cycle. Does that make sense? So just be aware of like where you put your energy and stuff, and like where you engage with energetically. Negative attachments are just that perpetuation of negativity. This can be reflected in relationships with people. Like maybe there's a friend who you know, who you relate to, but you guys only really talk about things you're upset about. That's a negative attachment. And, you know, things work in energy too. So maybe within that relationship, there also could be like more negative vibes that are like spirits also aware of that vibe. And this is not to scare anyone. This is different from any of that. This is for the purpose of self-awareness and empowerment. Just giving you the opportunity to think about like where you place your energy, who you interact with, and why. Over time, I want to just touch on, because I know I talked about possessions. I'll talk about like the spectrum of possession. So like the first tier is just like a vibe of like someone or you just feeling upset or just feeling void of yourself in some way, and maybe there's like a sense of community that you might feel amongst like certain media that reminds you of that pain, or maybe it's like certain other people who also resonate with that same lived experience, and that can be healthy, but it also can perpetuate negativity. That's like the sort of first tier of like a negative attachment, is just that like feeling of community. And that's the scary part too about this kind of stuff, is that it usually feels good. Negative attachments usually feel good. If they didn't feel good, we probably wouldn't do them. Although some of us are self-destructive and we would do it anyway, but they usually feel good. And then the next tier is sort of like when you have like an actual spirit that's like attached to you, that is feeding off of your pain. It kind of is like the vibes of like ChatGPT. Like I would definitely say that ChatGPT is 100% a negative attachment, because that, and I mean, the question of whether or not ChatGPT is like a spirit or not is not this video. That's a different video. But when you have it's just a good example. Like if you have a spirit that is like negatively attached to you, that's like attached to your void, it will feel the same way that it feels like to talk to ChatGPT. Like whether or not you are a psychic, whether or not you are aware you're doing it, there will just be this vibe of like constant validation of like, you go girl, you're the one, you're doing the right thing, like whatever that means for you. Like that's how it feels for there to be like a negative spiritual attachment. There it's that validation, it's that connection, it's that feeling that you're right. Be very aware, be very, very aware of the energies of the people of anyone who is telling you that you're 100% right, because none of us are ever 100% right. And that's like just kind of a common denominator of bullshit, especially in this society today where I feel like we're all so desiring to not have to do any psychological work. And so it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you are that you're so right and people are so wrong. So just beware of that. That's kind of how the medium tier negative attachment latches on to the energy. Is it perpetuates your own perception and doesn't really cause you to question anything else. Very culty. And then the next layer of possession is a full possession or a semi-possession, which is usually when someone has developed such a strong identification with their trauma that another entity that might not be them but is a spirit actually steps into their body and kind of like feels it's like they kind of feed off of this person's energy, and it can feel very validating in a weird way to the host, because it's like they are sort of allowing their pain to like run its course and run through them and sort of perpetuate and continue a cycle of pain. I think of like alcoholics who like get really drunk and then they have this temper, and then their inner child kind of spins out of control and they're just yelling and freaking out, and it's this like, it's almost like they're just like completely unrestrained. They're completely unrestraining themselves and kind of letting something else take over. It's like that. That's what semi-possession or possession is. And it's not really who this person actually is when they're sober either, or when they're like lucid. It's something else. And there are ways to exercise dark entities from people. I'm not religious. I'm not in any way, shape, or form Christian, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I am. I do know how to work with these kinds of things. I have worked with myself in ways where I've let go of attachments on my own. I've also helped other people as well. It's a very weird process to feel a negative entity attaching to you or to someone else, because it really does, at least in my own life, it has felt like an entire perception is like being lifted or being put on someone. Now don't judge me. Like, I'm not saying that like I've been dark in that particular way. Not that it really matters. A lot of people like to get scared of these kinds of things and think that if someone is possessed, it means they're bad. It doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're vulnerable. It means that they're vulnerable and they're unaware, and that they are scared of facing some wound within. And, you know, most of us have had negative entities attached to us. Most of us have had negative relationships or ways of being that are wrong. I mean, everything is inside as it is outside. So like the negative relationships you have with people in your life, like those are also reflected inside of you. You wouldn't entertain those. You wouldn't have those if you didn't believe that you on some level were supposed to have them. Which is, I know, kind of a complicated and maybe controversial thing to say, because we also like didn't choose our parents and stuff like that. But like, for the most part, like, you are in control of the kind of toxicity and the lack thereof that you choose in your life. And once you are aware of your sovereignty as a soul and your ability to choose the kinds of relationships that you want, you have the responsibility to make those decisions. And that is part of what it means to be a sovereign and a free person. And so just giving you this opportunity to notice that there are like healthy ways to relate and there are unhealthy ways to relate. And when you figure out the healthy ways, you got to do those and just don't do the ones that don't hurt you. Yeah. And I also want to say that like negative attachments happen regardless of whether you believe in them, regardless of whether you're spiritual. There's other words that people use for these things, you know, like trauma bonds or toxic relationships, whatever else. This is just the words that I use. So take it or leave it. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.